We kind of didn't just wake up one day and go, do you know what? We want to build a business that makes boating easy and enjoyable, and that's going to drive everything that we do. It didn't just happen like that. It was actually a lot of hours that went into doing that work to think about, well, why do we really exist? And for us, reflecting on the lessons that we took from losing Dad, it changed our outlook on life forever, around what's actually really important and, ultimately what your quality of your life is measured by. Just thinking about that alone and what boating can actually do for people and the impact that can actually have on families and people's legacy. We thought, well, if we can make boating right and make it easy and enjoyable for people, then ultimately that means that they're going to be out creating more memories with their friends and having those experiences with their families. If you're serious about building a business that isn't just a hobby, I think it's absolutely essential to spend the time reflecting on why you're doing what you're doing. There's really, really hard days and really, really hard times. And at the end of the day, having a purpose of why you're doing what you're doing and something that's bigger than just selling boats is ultimately what gets you through those tough times.
You're listening to the Rising Tidecast, the podcast for sharing the stories, the lessons, and all the good stuff from legends in the marine industry. Welcome to another episode of the Rising Tidecast. Today we've got one of the people that's most responsible for helping me find the marine industry and significantly shaping my journey to establish and grow Rising Tide. So super thankful to have Sam Short on the podcast. Welcome, Sam.
Happy to be here, Steve.
Yeah, Sam's been a mentor and partner for the last few years. Sam is half of Short Marine with his brother Ryan. We've been on many great adventures together, haven't we? Over the past few years, we've had some great chats too. I think you are one of the pioneers in the industry, especially in the marketing side of things, but also in everything else that you do. And the reason why I think we get on so well is you're a big believer in marketing and story in marketing and the effect of like narrative marketing and how that plays a big part in, I guess, everything you guys do. You've been in the marine industry since basically day one, right?
Yeah.
Your dad was a well-known titan here in the industry in Australia, but you took a different path at first, right? Take us back. What was life like for you before Short Marine, growing up around, your dad and the whole industry, but being a part of it in a different way?
I get asked this a lot, how we got into the industry. And, I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense of that we were pretty much born into it. Our grandfather was in the industry. He was a professional fisherman, and then he started his own boat company. He was just building aluminium, tinnies at the time. CL was the brand, and the Super Skua still got a pretty serious following. But so Dad was building them for my grandfather, and then, decided that he didn't want to keep welding, and so I loaded them all up on a truck and drove up the coast and started selling them. And that's when, Dad started what was his business, which was Andrew Short Marine, which was the boat dealership. Fast forward 26, 28 years, had built the biggest dealership in the Southern Hemisphere. And he was the dealer for a number of different brands, be it Sea Ray, Boston Whaler, Brig, Mercury. He was the biggest Mercury dealer in Australia for 25 years straight. For us growing up, we've just always been on and around boats. Mum and Dad split up when I was 7, and so we actually moved to the Gold Coast with Mum, but every school holidays when we'd come down, everything was boating. Dad had a way of very much incorporating his work into his life. And so whether we were coming down and we were, out on the hacking, rafting up next to friends and families, or we were out in our own, tinnies, or Dad was big into sailing as well. So we were always, sailing and doing deliveries. I still remember when I was about 10 years old, Dad was a Blackwatch dealer at that stage, and he was bringing a Blackwatch. I think it was like a 30 Blackwatch down from the Gold Coast down to Sydney. He loaded us boys on board and did the big trip offshore. But yeah, we've just always been on and around boats. And so when I was 16, 2009, Dad actually passed away in a tragic yachting accident. It was a routine race for them, prior to the Sydney to Hobart. Just a race from Sydney down to Wollongong, around Flinders Island and back to Sydney. It was kind of very, very standard, and that night, seems like they were having some troubles with their GPS and things like that, and they run aground. And when they were rounding that island, and tragically, two people died that night. There was 18 people on board. Two of my other brothers were on board that night as well, which they managed to get onto the island and get lifted to shore and survive. So after that instance, as I said, I was 16. Ryan was 20. It was a very pivotal time for us and an age for us, just being, young men and coming into that phase of life. And so, it was around the time of the GFC as well. So, a lot of people in the marine industry were starting to do it tough, but it was about a year to 2 years after Dad's accident that his business, Andrew Short Marine, went into liquidation. At that point, actually, I was playing rugby league. I was playing, semi-professionally at this stage. And when I finished school, I got offered a contract to play for the Bulldogs in the rugby league, NRL. That's why it was a 3-year contract. And so I flew down from Sydney. It was a big cultural shift for me to be moving down and living in Bankstown. So I didn't last too long there, to be honest. After about 6 months, I got a release from that contract and I moved over and signed with Manly.
Smart man.
And to be honest, the people in the club was great. It was just a big adaptation for me, going from a kid born in Cronulla to living and growing up on the Gold Coast in Palm Beach, and then, moving straight down to Bankstown, Georges Hall, was a bit of a shock.
Just far enough away from the ocean.
Ever since I've been growing up, I've been washing boats, detailing boats, driving boats and antifouling boats and things like that. And so I was doing that kind of part-time. And then when I was, about 20, I was playing at Manly, and I just had a really bad run of injuries. I think I had like eight surgeries over like a 2.5 year period. 3 hip operations and a full groin reconstruction, which that ended up kind of being the end of it for me. I couldn't play anymore after that. Still can't really run to this day because of that. So
I've seen you run after a few beers, honestly.
yeah, just not fast. I've always been a very driven and ambitious, competitive person, and so when I stopped playing footy, which was that was always a childhood dream of mine to play NRL, and I was putting every waking minute of energy into that. It was a big change for me, and at that point, Ryan had started Ryan Short Marine, which was the slipway at the Spit, doing all of the, to do all the anti-fouling and prop speed and polishing and things like that. So I started working for him probably close to 12 months. And then he got asked to deliver a boat, a Sea Ray 60 Sundancer from Sydney to Malaysia.
That's a wild story. We'll have to get Ryan on to tell that one.
Yeah, it was. There was some pretty close calls on that trip. Actually, that would be a good one for you to do. But so Ryan went away, and he that trip went over, it felt like it was about 4 to 6 weeks. And so when he left, then Ryan, just being kind of the person he is, he pretty much left me the keys for his business. And I was, 22 at this stage, with zero business experience. That part of, dealing with the customers and managing the team and, taking the work home, it was something that I really enjoyed.
Had you had that in any capacity before this point?
Zero.
What did it feel like when you were just like, oh, wait a minute? Was there a time when you were running the ship where you were just like, I really love this?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was probably a little bit naive as well at the time. Well, not probably, I was. You kind of think you know a lot more than you actually do. For me, doing, things like gurning boats every day and doing the anti-fouling and things like that, I knew that wasn't quite as stimulating for me as what I needed. But when I started to get a taste of actually running the business side of things, that's what opened eyes up for me to what I might do next. I had all of this energy and this drive and this focus that I needed to pour into something. And, business has ultimately kind of been that area for me. So when Ryan got back, he kind of threw me back out on the tools. But at that point, I wasn't kind of ready to go back out there, and said to him, I want to start my own thing, I want, and something that we could do together. I want to get into sales. I want to start. And so Ryan said, yep, agree. And so at that point, we started our business together, Short Marine, which started just as a boat brokerage. I was just listing and selling, a lot of the service clients that I had relationships with that I was managing, when they wanted to, list and sell their boats, I was doing that. And then that quickly transitioned into, we reached out to Yamaha obviously running the slipway and the service department there, we were noticing a lot of there was no Yamaha dealer on the water, and on all of the the Yamaha dealership model very much had these big showroom requirements with all these certain signage, certain square meterage, which you couldn't do that on the water. And so after reaching out to them a few times and them going, look, it just doesn't fit the model that we have, we ended up getting the managing director down to the marina and, took him for a walk, and we're showing him a number of boats and said, particularly a couple of them were commercial operators, but saying, look, that one used to have Yamahas, it's now got Mercuries because there was no dealer. That one used to have Yamahas, it's now got Mercuries because they had no dealer. And they came back after that and created what was a new model at the time. They put us on as what they called a fleet dealer. I guess how they had to position it to their other dealer network was that we were managing a lot of the kind of commercial stuff, and therefore didn't need to have those other requirements. And so that's what started with us getting the Yamaha dealership. And then from there, every young man, I think, looks up to their fathers and always aspires to be like them. And all of us boys absolutely idolized Dad. He was, particularly for the life and the business that he'd created for himself, he was loved by everyone. He had a great network. It seemed like his life, as I said, the way that he managed to incorporate his work with his personal and family life was something that we always aspired to. He always, he was always traveling, going over to dealer conferences and things like that. And I just remember always kind of looking at that and also the business that he'd built, and was kind of like, would love to do that one day. And so a lot of that drive probably came from that. But at that point, we had the Yamaha dealership, and then we were at the Sydney Boat Show. And at this stage, we were trying to get a boat dealership, essentially, and just thought naturally that kind of, center console, fishing boat, offshore boat was a bit of a good market that we could get into. And we went to the boat show, and there was a Grady White there, actually. There was one on display at the Sydney show. And I still remember to this day going up to the guys that were there and asked if they'd be interested in putting us on as a sub-dealer. They basically said no to us becoming a sub-dealer, and so we just went straight to Grady White direct. But put together this PowerPoint basically pitching to Grady White about the opportunity that there is in Sydney. So not only the opportunity that there is in Sydney, but particularly with us as dealers. So, in the doc, there's a lot of stuff around, obviously our history and the fact that Dad sold Boston Whalers. And so we still, at that point through our service department, we were servicing over 40 Boston Whalers a year reoccurring. And so a lot of the pitch was kind of, well, when they come time to upgrade, Grady White would be the great option. But then I think what ended up being really attractive to Grady White and had them even start to consider us seriously was how service focused we were. So because we'd started, our business was largely a service business at that stage, and now knowing them and where their values are and what they value in dealers is everything about the service and the customer experience. So, but the pitch to them was the opportunity, and then sure enough, they agreed to meet with us. And so we flew over there, Ryan and I was 24 at this stage, Ryan was 28. And we spent 2 days with them, went through the factory, we sat down, we were interviewed by the president and vice president and a number of the key staff there. And it got to the end of the second day, and they essentially said, okay, well, we've thought about it and we want to give you guys an opportunity to become a dealer for New South Wales and Australia. And they said, but we need you guys to order 4 stock boats, one of each, they pitch, one from say 18 to 23 foot, one from 23 to 30 foot.
What was the size of that order?
It was about 1.8 to 2 mil, which back then, this is 2016, at least that order these days would probably be more like 5. But probably before they said, okay, we're prepared to give you a dealer, they said that they've thought long and hard about it. And, one of the biggest challenges, they were like, whilst we like you guys, we think you're great, we can see your passion, we can see your drive. They said, you're 24 and 28. They said, our next youngest dealer we have in the dealer network is 45. And they said that, our client is the same sort of clientele that would buy a BMW. And they said, and you would never walk into a BMW dealership and be greeted by a 24-year-old and a 28-year-old. So it took them a bit to overcome that, but I think they could see the passion and the drive in us and gave us the opportunity. But the final kind of litmus test for them was to see if we could put our money where our mouth was. To this day, they still don't force us to stock any boats.
And is that unique with dealerships in general?
Yeah, big time. We were used to seeing, through Dad's days with Sea Ray and Boston Whaler, I mean, there were minimum stocking requirements that you had to meet or you'd lose the dealership. And it was very much volume based. And what we see now with Grady White is they have, we could sell one boat a year and not hear from them. But if we could sell 100 boats a year, but if we get one poor customer satisfaction survey, we'll get an email from the president. So that's just, that's a little bit about Grady White and their uniqueness. But, looking back now, because they have never asked us to stock that many boats again, I think it was a very intentional move on their part to see if we actually had the financial backing to be able to, facilitate a dealership.
Straight in the deep end.
Yeah, in the nature. Well, at that point, it was difficult because they asked us to order, let's just say $2 million worth of boats. We didn't have $2 million. We're 24, we're 28. We didn't inherit a cent from Dad and, his business that he'd built. And anyway, they said, okay, so if you order these 4 boats, we'll give you the dealership. And we just said, okay, let's do it.
What a test. Young and driven and just going, yep, we're going to make this happen. It's funny because that's one of your values.
Yeah.
Doesn't that exactly align with that?
That's right. And so part of that ordering those boats, though, was that they needed a 30% deposit up front. The rest of the money was due, I think, 3 months later. That, I don't know if my maths is right here, but they required about $400,000 from us initially to secure these orders, which was essentially every penny that we had in the bank account at that time. And so we went away and that night transferred the $400,000 to Grady White and said, well, we've now got about 2.5 months to figure out how we're going to come up with the rest.
That's amazing that you got Grady White and made that big impact. But what I find, because I know your story, is that full circle part from your initial contact with Game and Leisure about Grady White. So how does it continue from there?
Yeah, so fast forward for 5 years, and Graham McCloy, who's the owner of Game and Leisure, who were the great Queensland dealership for Grady White, but they had all of Australia at that stage when we first approached them. He was getting to the end of his career. He was getting a bit ill, and long story short, the opportunity came up for us he was looking to sell the business to get out of it. And so whilst we had some rocky years in those early years of our relationship, just being the New South Wales dealer and they being the Queensland dealer, we ended up forging a really good relationship with him. And when the opportunity came up to buy his business, there was another person that was in the race for it as well. But we ended up winning that, if you will. And that's what started for us the opening of the Gold Coast office, but also the acquisition of brands like Viking, Valhalla, and Regal as well. And we, became, particularly for Viking and Valhalla, we became the Australian distributor at that point, which is where we are now for Grady White, for Viking, for Valhalla, for Capelli. And then we have, Regal and now Chris Craft up in Queensland as well. And that's one thing a lot of people ask a lot as well is is this business Dad's business and, are we kind of carrying it on? It's not, we've started Short Marine with 0 employees and, in a lot of respects, $0 in the bank account. And so there was one key person in particular, one of Dad's friends who's very much, been a godsend for us along the way, particularly at 2 key points of us building the business. And the first one was when Andrew Short Marine had shut down and Ryan had started Ryan Short Marine, the slipway. At that time, he was required to come up with 3 months rent, which was, it was $60,000 at the time. And I remember Peter Gregg, his name is, who was one of Dad's really, really close friends, came in and fronted that initial deposit to start Ryan Short Marine. And then...
Why do you think he did that?
Probably 2 things. I think number one is probably obviously the respect that he had for Dad. So, he ended up buying a few boats from Dad. He was the CFO of Qantas at the time, and then he moved on. So, but I think he had a lot of respect for Dad, and then I think probably the other part was him seeing the way that things went with Dad's business and all of that side of things.
He probably saw something in you guys that he knew that this was not only going to help you out and continue the legacy kind of in a different way, but I know you guys both have an incredible work ethic and you just make it happen all the time. I'm assuming too that that's something that I see but also probably something that a lot of other people see. Like, how are these guys doing this? And you just make it happen. So yeah, I think that's a big part of why someone would just go, here's 60 grand.
I appreciate that, Stephen. Initially, that was back in 2012, and this was when we'd approached Grady White. This was 2017. You know, it was the same thing, you know, so we'd paid the deposit and we're like, well, we've got two and a half months to come up with, you know, the rest of this money. And, you know, we'd put an email together and sent it off to Pete and said, look, this is what we've just done. And, you know, we'd love to have a meeting and chat about it when you're back and, you know, just see what we can do. And I still remember he just wrote back at the time. He said, boys, I'm in Vegas for a work thing. He said, I'm in on the boats. Chat when we're back. And then so he did. He organised and transferred the rest of that money. He did all of it on the handshake. You know, to this day, you know, he never even asked for a cent of it back. We managed to give him some of that money back when the business was in a position to. But you know, reality is, like, looking back on it now, like, you know, there's no way we'd be where we are today, like, without him. So
how important do you think mentors and people like Peter, whether it's financial support or just business advice or personal support outside of, or, you know, it's all kind of intermingled these days anyway. Like, how important has that been to you personally and also the growth of, you know, Short Marine and what you guys are today?
Yeah, I mean, it's been like absolutely critical. And not just him, we've been lucky to have a few of Dad's close friends that were, you know, super successful businessmen that have been involved in the business and still are. You know, they very much form, you know, a type of advisory board for us. We're very, very grateful to have people of that caliber who have not only given us direction on certain things when we've needed it, but to also, you know, do things like, you know, what they've done in the past financially as well to help make those things happen. So to kind of get us back on track of the story. So yeah, so we ordered the Grady White boats and then had them arrive in, and it's just kind of been like go from there, really. We managed to get International Dealer of the Year in our first year.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was actually. And we hadn't won it again until last year, actually. So yeah, we had Grady White. We had Grady White for a few years, and we were having a lot of good success with building the brand there.
How many boats did you sell in that first year to get International Dealer of the Year?
26.
From 4 stock boats,
yeah,
to 26 boats.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris Carroll and the rest of the team, after that first year of like, let's see if they prove themselves? What would have been going through their head?
I don't know. I mean, one thing I will say is that Chris Carroll, who is the president at Grady White, as you know, and you've seen this, Steve, she has a lot of time for us, and she's done a number of things, you know, for us, particularly from like a mentoring point of view, that, you know, I haven't seen her like do for others. And so I definitely do kind of question at times why she's, you know, so, you know, giving with her time and her wisdom and things like that to us. You know, she's been there 40 years. She started when she was, you know, around our age as well. And I think she probably does see a lot of her in us, particularly with just how ambitious we are and passionate about what we do. Having those runs on the board early obviously, you know, helped as well.
I think so. They would have been shocked. They would have been like, what? Where did these guys come from?
They're actually quite a conservative company. So like, again, looking back on it now, like they take very little risks, you know, with things. So I think that no doubt there would have been, you know, around that board table, there would have been some serious sort of question marks around giving us the opportunity.
And you guys are the outliers too. Like, you know, as far as the dealer network goes, definitely a bit different than the rest, but share that same kind of passion and drive that I think what it takes to be successful in the industry and what you guys have done.
It's a good point you bring up. Like, I think a lot of people think that the marine industry, like we see a lot of people who have been super successful in business outside of the marine industry. They get these dealerships because they have the financial backing to say to the manufacturer, hey, we'll order X amount of boats. But there's very few, almost none, that have actually ended up working out. And I think it's because people see the boating lifestyle and think that it's, you know, relaxed and, you know, you're on the water and how hard can it be, you know, selling a boat to someone. But I think that is the real difference between, you know, the successful dealers and the ones that aren't. As I said before, lucky enough to see Dad and how committed he was to the business that he'd built. And so that's kind of all we've ever known, you know.
The whole business model that you guys have developed, Was that around the service side of things and the dealership when you got Grady White? Because from where maybe that started to where you guys are now, first of all, tell us about what it is that you guys offer, that end-to-end solution. And then I think also thinking about it in the fact of like, why is that such a deadly combo, not only for like the customers that you serve, but also for the boat manufacturers that you either maybe get because of that you get to represent, or they hear about you and you get approached because it's something that is pretty unique.
Yeah, so I mean, where we're at as we sit here today, we've got just over 60 staff across both Sydney and Gold Coast. I'd say about 70% of those staff are in the service side of the business. So, we are the only dealership in the country that has all in-house, a team of mechanics, a team of electricians, a team of shipwrights, a team of detailers, and a team of antifoulers. They're what we've identified as the 5 core and main services that a boat needs. And it was driven, whilst yes, we started in service, I think that is in with just the slipway, Ryan, and just the slipway, us adding on these other departments. So, that's kind of naturally where we started. But, us adding on these other 4 departments, it's a core piece of what we do, and it's a core thing that we identified very early on that was what was missing. We often hear that saying a lot of the time, 2 best days of a boat owner's life, the day they buy it and the day they sell it. And I could just never for the life of me figure out where that saying came from, because boating for me had only ever been the best times and the best memories that I have had. And when I really started to look deeply into that, and I'd start to question people on why they would say that, or I'd start to look at people that were selling their boat and then getting out of it altogether, it was almost always down to a lack of service or support. That for us kind of brought to the attention that if we can build out a business offering that can not only sell someone a boat, but look after all of the maintenance and all the servicing that comes with it and make it a real step-on, step-off experience, then we're going to firstly make boating a lot more accessible to a lot more people that might not know kind of where to start, or, and this is stuff I hear a lot. I still do a bit of sales within the business, and so I'm still speaking to customers, and listening a lot to people that are looking at getting into boating, or if they have owned a boat, they're not overly experienced or confident, and it's those conversations that are really driving where our business offering is going. Yes, we have the core services that we offer so that we're able to just build a full maintenance plan for someone once they buy a boat from us, to be able to just look after everything for them, to take that hassle out of it for them. But other things that we're starting to incorporate into the business now, we offer unlimited driver training for anyone that buys a boat from us, just because we know that, again, a common thing that we were seeing with people is that people weren't using their boats because they weren't confident driving them. For us to see people using their boats, the more they use the boats, the more enjoyment they're getting out of it, and then obviously the more likely they are to stay in boating altogether. And so that end-to-end service offering is a really big part about what we do. It actually drives everything that we do. The vision statement for the business, which Steve, is to make boating easy and enjoyable so people can create more memories, and as a result of that, live better lives. So
the reason that you've added those things, and the reason that you keep iterating on the offering and adding to it, is because you listen to the customers, right? Their experience with you is the number one focus, which I think is one of those main reasons why that's a deadly combo for boat manufacturers and also the customers, is because you're constantly checking the pulse on what is it that people are looking for and what is it that they need to have a better time on the water, and how can we give that to them. And I think that is something that's super important and unique, unfortunately, in a lot of businesses. But I think that's also due to you digging into the why of why you do business, and the effort that you've put in and Ryan's put in and the whole team about really understanding holistically why you guys are here doing this, why people even come to you from that side of the why of things. Why do you think it's important to put that work into the why of being in business and defining that?
I was a part of a business training and mentoring group early on when we'd started out, and they did a workshop on this topic specifically. It was around they called it vision, mission, values. And I used to be honest, think that stuff was very just woo-woo, very corporate. You see these values on the walls. They're trust and honesty and all this stuff. And that's
some
the
nice
furthest thing that's
stock
going
photos,
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'd never really believed in it. But for us, as the business grew more and more, once we started to have more than, say, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys, you're no longer in direct contact with everyone on a daily basis. And so the business really relies on its culture, which culture is for us, we define by our vision, our mission, and our values. You start to build the business, and the business becomes bigger. It's the culture that is everything. That's how we look after our customers. It's the standards we hold ourselves to. And you're right in saying that we kind of didn't just wake up one day and go, you know what, we want to build a business that makes boating easy and enjoyable, and that's going to drive everything that we do. It didn't just happen like that. It was actually a lot of hours that went into doing that work to think about, well, why do we really exist? And to that statement, the first part, which was just, as I just touched on, was to make boating easy and enjoyable. The second part to that statement is around to enable people to create more memories and ultimately live better lives. And so a big part of that reflection piece was for us reflecting on, the lessons that we took from losing Dad, and particularly losing him in the manner that we did. It changed our outlook on life forever, around what's actually really important. And when you think about your life at the end, and I think it's important for people to think through life in that lens, and you think about what it's really, ultimately what your quality of your life is measured by. I break it down to 3 things. Number 1, your life's measured by the impact that you have. Number 2 is by the quality of your relationships. And number 3 is the experiences and memories that you create. And, for us, not having Dad here anymore, all we have left is the memories that we had with him. And for us, 90% of those memories were boating and being on the water. And so just thinking about that alone and what boating can actually do for people when it's done right, and the impact that can actually have on families and people's legacy, we thought, well, if we can get this boating thing right, because going back to what I said before, a lot of people do boating but don't do it right and have poor experiences. But if we can make boating right and make it easy and enjoyable for people, then ultimately that means that they're going to be out, creating more memories with their friends and having those experiences with their families. And so if we can do that and make that available for more people, then we're ultimately impacting people's lives. So if you're serious about building a business that isn't just a hobby, I think it's absolutely essential to spend the time reflecting on why you're doing what you're doing, because, you see it, Steve, you work closely with us, and, than anyone, there's really, really hard days and really, really hard times. And at the end of the day, having a purpose of why you're doing what you're doing, and something that's, bigger than just selling boats is ultimately what gets you through those tough times.
The way that you guys tell that story to your customers and through the services that you provide, I think is super powerful, right? And it comes from a genuine place too. I think it's just finding what it is that you really want to help the people that you serve, and digging into that and finding meaning in what it is that you can do for them. I think the why, especially what you guys have put forward, it builds this community of people that are so connected to you, way more than just the product you sell. It's people that believe in what you do because they feel so connected to the life that you are wanting for them, right? Through what you do.
Like I said, I went through a workshop that helped, and it really just had, I can't remember a lot of them off the top of my head now, but it had a lot of kind of questions that helped you find that. But one of the big ones was starting with, well, what's the impact and what's the ultimate effect of what my business does on the end customer, and kind of start there and work it from there.
You touched on company culture and how that is part of this, right? What do you think that the company culture that you guys have built and are still building, how does it make people enjoy their days at work more? Number 1, but then also number 2, how does it elevate the customer experience? And I think a lot of people live these values and the whys because they understand it, because you communicate it a lot.
I think particularly it's a critical piece for now for when we hire people. We hire and fire very, very, we're very strong and firm on that to our values. And so it's important that we do have like-minded people in the business. But the part around having a real purpose behind what you do and how that actually impacts the employees is huge. I think back to my days and times, even when I was working on the slipway, for example, or when I was washing boats, like I didn't really enjoy doing it, but it's because it was just like a routine task. There was no tie for me back to, okay, well, if I clean this boat and get it looking brand new, like what's the actual impact that has on the customer? So for us, whereas when you have a bit of actual purpose behind what you're doing, it makes work so much more enjoyable, and so that's something that from a leadership perspective, we really try and are making a big conscious effort to make sure that we are continuing to remind the team of why we're doing what we're doing, and also how each individual within our business plays a critical role in us being able to ultimately deliver on that. Like for example, we could have the best people in customer experience and someone could, be updating the customer and doing all that. But at the end of the day, if they get down onto the boat and, the shipwrights who have been, or the mechanics who have been working on it have, left big greasy footprints on the boat or anything like that, then at the end of the day, the whole experience is ruined. And so we try and, talk and communicate that a lot to the team. And if you just look at, our retention rates, for our business, we've had, I think, one person in 7 years leave the business, which is huge, aside from the odd few that, weren't doing so well or they culturally weren't a good fit and we made a conscious choice to move them on. I think a big part of why people are here and sticking around is because they're bought into what we're doing and what we're trying to build and achieve. And, you've come with us when we've been overseas to visit Grady White and visit Chris Craft, and you look at those companies and they've got people that have been there for 20, 30, 40 years, and they're people and companies that have a real purpose as well. So that part around getting really clear on what your purpose is and what the mission of the business is absolutely critical to everything. So not only the internal stuff around making sure that, every person in the business is aligned to what we're doing, but from a marketing perspective, it's really important that is felt through the branding and everything that we're doing. And as you said, that ultimately, attracts people to want to do business with us.
People listening to this, maybe some of them are thinking about getting into the marine industry or just new at it. What, in your eyes, makes a great person as far as like key traits or characteristics to work and become successful in a company for long term?
First and foremost is they've got to have humility. Like, I think it's that whole kind of no dickhead policy. First and foremost, you bring one of us, seen what it's like when you bring one of those type of people into a business and then the impact that can have on the culture. So got to have humility, got to have the kind of willingness to want to learn and want to grow. One of our core values is world class as well. So we are trying to build a team of the best people in the industry, and that's across the board, whether that's the guys that do our content or the customer experience guys or our tradesmen. I mean, whoever it is, we are really looking to try and build a team of the best. And so someone that's really, passionate about the work that they're doing and actually wants to strive and become the best is really important. And then other than that, it probably is to the rest of our core values is what we definitely look for when we're going through that process of hiring someone.
What experience stands out to you that has shaped your perspective on who you've become business-wise or on a personal level? And what was that lesson that it taught you?
I would say the thing that impacted me most would be the loss of Dad, to be honest, because it changed my perspective on life like forever. Like everything from just the way I view life, the way I view my relationships, the way I view my family, the way I view my friends. One of the big parts of the, business that we're building that I feel is almost an obligation for us to share as a message is that reminder that life is short and that we are only here for a very short time in the scheme of things. And we also don't know when it's going to end. I see and hear so much. I have so many customers that are coming to us at a point in life where they've just had, they've just lost someone, or they've had some really big health scare. Or I don't like the fact that it takes for something like that for people to change the way that they live. And so whilst it was really hard for us in those, those first few years after losing Dad, like reflecting on it now and after getting through that tough kind of mourning period of the loss of him not being here, it's turned out to be, the greatest thing, in a lot of ways that has happened to me, because it's completely changed the life that I live, even just the decisions that I make on a daily basis around, I just want to live a really good life, the type of life that if, I was to drop dead tomorrow, one that I'd be really, really happy and satisfied with.
It does really say a lot about character and also, your willingness to not dwell on those things, but learn from them.
Another big lesson would be, it's probably a bit more business related, is the importance of having really good people in your team and in your life, and then investing into those, those people and those relationships is probably the other biggest thing. When we look at, we're lucky to get exposed to, the most successful companies in our industry. When we go overseas and we get to see behind the curtains around these companies and what makes them so special, and the common denominator in all of them is the people and how they invest into their people. That's a huge lesson that now we carry forward, and it drives a lot of the decisions that we make.
It's great that the brands that you guys do represent are open about that stuff. They would want to see you succeed anyway, you'd hope, but it's great to, I guess, mirror some of those values and takeaways from those trips that we do. You come away from that and you just have you have so many ideas of how to implement what you just learned, and it's something that's rare. Not everybody gets to experience it. What's one of the biggest challenges you guys are facing in business now?
There's definitely been a bit of a change in the industry and in the market right now. I've always kind of done, I guess, naturally, is view these challenges as opportunities, and opportunities for us to change the way we operate and to ultimately be better. And so, the biggest probably challenge and the focus for us in the business right now is around sales, sales and marketing, like getting customers. So, the amount of inbound inquiry has definitely slowed down. This is what I'm constantly talking about with the team. It's like we've got two options right now. Right. So let's say that the market has slowed, come off, say 30%, 40%, that's just a kind of round number, but that's, loosely what it feels like. We've got two options. We can either continue to do exactly what we've been doing for the last 5 years, and we'll experience as a business a 30 to 40% drop, or we can look at what we're doing and completely change what we're doing, because there's still a market there. It might only be 60% of what it used to be 100%, but there's still a market there. Or we can look at what we're doing, change how we operate, and level up in every single area, and then ultimately make up for that drop and keep the results constant. And I'm kind of proud to say that we've done that. In the last month alone, we've sold more boats in the last month than we had in the previous 6 months. But it hasn't just kind of happened. There was obviously the boat show, but we're looking at doing a lot more stuff internally, being a lot more proactive with how we're running our sales teams, what we're doing from a marketing perspective, but looking at how we can, generate business essentially. So there's been a big shift in the way that we are operating, because we don't just want to sit and wait for the phone to ring or wait for that email inquiry to come in like most people do, and like we've been able to do for the last 7 years, and we've been fine. It's just there is a notable shift right now. And the exciting thing that I try to communicate to the team is that, like, yes, we're going to change the way that we operate right now, but we should come out the other side. And when we come out the other side with this new way of operating and the market picks back up, then we're going to have more sales than we know what to do with. So
that's largely also due to the brand that you guys have built. I've seen it grow since we've been working together for a few years now. On the marketing side of things, I know there's a lot involved in the brand growth and your reputation and stuff, but from what I see, it's a lot of sharing the stories that you guys have and pulling back the curtain and talking about the why. So also a bit of narrative marketing, right? Which I think is super powerful, which is, I think, what we riff on a lot and what we connect with, digging into the deeper meaning to the stories and the services and the events and stuff like that. What's your thoughts on narrative marketing and how that's played a big role in that?
It's honestly, it's been huge. I think, at the end of the day, people buy from people. I mean, you'd remember we had a strategy session about 2 years ago, a marketing strategy session. And, one of the goals there was that we wanted to humanize the brand more, the Short Marine brand. And so, that's connect people to who we are and as people and as humans, not only us, as in Ryan and I, but, our team and our customers. We just wanted to make a big conscious effort to bringing that to life. And it doesn't just benefit from a sales side of thing either. Like we are in a market and in an industry that it is hard to attract and recruit top talent. We're finding it a lot easier now to, attract and recruit top talent than we ever have before because of the brand that we've built, and the amount of interviews that I've sat in with, people that we're looking at hiring and they've like, oh, I've watched all the videos. They just want to be a part of a brand that stands for something. And so it's all well and good for us to do what we're doing internally in terms of bringing that stuff to life. But the more that we can do it through content, it not only helps attract customers, but actually attracts like key staff as well, which is, the core component in being able to grow the business and achieve what we want to achieve. I mean, as well, when we go over to the US and we go to the different dealer conferences or the boat shows, we've got people all around the world that are talking about the type of marketing and the videos and things that we're doing and, just how impressed they are. I had one of the top dealers even at the Grady conference last year come up to us and want to just spend some time picking our brain. He said, he goes, I send all of your stuff to our head of marketing and say, we just need to do that.
Just do this.
That's a credit to you, Steve. I think the reason why it works well for us, I think we share the same vision for what we want to do there and know the importance of it. I think there's probably 2 reasons why a lot of people don't do it. Number one is they aren't really exactly clear on what their purpose is, what their story is, their why. And then the second piece is it's not something that you see a direct result from often. Like sometimes we might do a story, might be a fishing story and someone might have watched that video and come to us. That's very rare. It is, the whole branding play is a long play. It's one that I feel it gives the greatest return, but it's not something you often can get a direct result from that you can attribute to. So I think that's probably another reason why people don't invest in it, because they don't get to see that direct return. But if you know it works and you just commit to it,
what was it about seeing it in a long time horizon for you that said, I want to do this? I want to get somebody to be with us for the long term and build this brand with us, because the understanding of, okay, we're building something big here, and the content, although it's an investment for you guys, I think it's paid for itself many times over, but it's the long play.
I'm very much like a best practices kind of guy. When we want to build, a really good business, and in order to do that, we'll constantly be seeking what's best practices from other industries and things like that. And whether that's from a service perspective or a marketing perspective or a sales perspective, but, I'm constantly seeking that stuff out. And I think one of the most common things that I saw from a lot of great brands that, that I would follow or look into is that they were investing heavily into this side of things. And then, obviously speaking about the benefits of it when you do it and if you stick to it. So it's an investment into the long term, where, I'm 31 now, we're going to be in the industry for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So for us to invest into it is, just felt was a smart play based off the results that I was seeing across other industries.
Yeah, there's so many crossovers, I think, like in luxury car industry, real estate, stuff like that, all the things that we both follow and see, and you see the result of, and you're like, you become part of that brand that you watch all the time, and you really enjoy it and you feel connected to it, even though you might not do business with them now. I think it's really powerful. What's been an unexpected benefit of doing the content marketing that we do?
Well, I definitely didn't expect the benefit that it would get as it relates to, employees and building out the team. Not only building out a team, also retaining a team. The team obviously see all the videos and things that we put out. And whilst we try and, incorporate a lot of that stuff as in sharing customer stories or, talking about our why, whilst we'll try and share that a lot as much as possible with the team, when they see these videos that actually bring it to life, these are guys that might be an electrician that's just fitting the screens on this thing, but then they go and see a video of that boat out actually being used and the benefit that the customer has, is receiving from it. I think it gives them fulfillment as well. So it's not just about attracting people, it's also like a really good retention tool as well, because people feel like they're a part of something. And particularly if we look at across our industry, there's not necessarily, a dealership that they might look at and think, oh, well, I want to be a part of that.
Especially recently in the last year, we've kind of shifted to the general boating and lifestyle. So it's not just about, this one brand and what it does and what it's known for and what it gives you, which goes back to your why. And I think that's a much easier thing to align with, even if you don't love the brands that you see online that they sell or something from an outside perspective, like, oh, these guys do really cool stuff. And then maybe they're not your customer, but they tell someone else about it who would love a Grady White, but didn't know about that and loves fishing and stuff. And they're like, oh, I watch these guys all the time. They're awesome. You got to go, check them out.
It is becoming, a bit less about the product for us and more about the experience and what you ultimately get. Like, I'm noticing more and more and more that people are coming and buying boats from us, not necessarily because of the brands that we sell. It's because they want that service or they want that experience or they want to be a part of, their shootouts or like our events and things like that. So I think also for us seeing those results, and particularly for me, as I said, to like the fact that I still do some sales, like I'm still, interacting and speaking and dealing with customers. And so I'm, paying close attention to what they're saying. And when I see and hear a customer that, may even prefer the boat from another dealer, the fact that they want to buy from us because they want the service and experience that we give is also probably what's given us a bit more confidence to double down financially on, that side of things, the marketing side of things.
Crazy when you told me that, like people switching brands from like owning how many Boston Whalers, but then going to a Grady just because they see what you guys do and you put it out there and they feel like it's something greater than just the boat that they're going to buy. What a recipe for a success if you put the effort in, because you guys spend a ton of time and a ton of work, outside of the day-to-day like business operations side. I think, do you have a favorite experience or story you've got on the water?
Every time we go out on the boat, and you're with your closest friends or you're with your family, like it's a memorable time. Probably one trip we delivered a Grady White 375 Freedom from Sydney up to Airlie Beach. So the customer has a holiday house up there, and so we had the boat arrive into Sydney. We did the fit out and did everything that we did there, and then we took the boat up north. And we decided to make a bit of a trip out of it. We picked a couple of friends up from the Gold Coast when we got there, and we did it over about 5 days. That trip was definitely probably one of the most memorable in recent time. I have another memory that wasn't necessarily overly positive experience. It was actually when I was a bit younger, when I was 15 or 16. It was right before Dad's accident, actually. It was the last Sydney to Hobart he did, and then it was in a big boat. It was a big 80-footer Shockwave. So he finished the Sydney to Hobart. We met him down there, and then like 2 days later said he wanted us to do the delivery back, to take the boat back. Now, with the Sydney Hobart, obviously all the boats leave Sydney and they all finish, within a few days of each other. And then they normally wait for a good weather window and then they like head back home. Dad needed to get home I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think he had some kind of work thing on that he needed to get home. And so everyone was waiting another 2 days for this weather to pass. I think it was like a big like nor'wester or something that was coming through. He convinced us that we were going to just go to Melbourne and then we'd fly from Melbourne up to Sydney. And we got to the top of Tasmania, like in the start of Bass Strait, and the wind had turned. Apparently, again, I wasn't checking the weather at this stage, whether this was always his plan or not, but he basically said it's too rough. We're going to be punching straight into it to go to Melbourne. We're just going to go straight to Sydney. And so meanwhile, everyone else in the fleet who did the Hobart waited a day or two because they've obviously seen the forecast and thought, like, that's just not pleasant.
Crazy.
Yeah. And so across Bass Strait we went, and there were waves that were dead set like twice the size of this building that we were going through and coming crashing down this big 80-foot yacht, and big waves coming over the deck. We all had to be actually harnessed on. I remember we were coming down one wave in particular, and Dad was at the helm and I was sitting next to him when we were coming down this wave. We had this big lot of water come across the deck that knocked him completely off the wheel. Like, I was flying all over the place as well. And then he gets up off the ground and we're like obviously soaking wet and grabs the wheel. And I just remember that was one of the bloody scariest times ever. But we got through it, and it was one of those things that, obviously with him not being in here, I was kind of grateful to go through that.
And it's so funny to hear that and the other stories that I hear from you guys, and then see those similar characteristics in you and Ryan.
Yeah, probably more Ryan than me, but yeah. That's the thing with boating, mate. Like, you look back at your life and they're the best moments in your life. And that's again why I was, what I was touching on before about why I think it is actually so special what we're doing here with the type of, service and experience that we're building, because the more people that we can get to experience that and they get to experience it with their friends, and we live in such a beautiful country as well, then we're actually going to have a really big impact on people's lives. So
that's what it's all about. Got some rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
First thing that comes to mind, all right? Favorite boat brand?
Grady White.
Favorite piece of content we've ever created and why?
Probably the America, which was, I think it was the first
episode of Short Stories.
Yeah, that one.
Why was it your favorite?
Because that was just such a fun trip, and the way that you captured it, it helps us relive that memory over and over again. So it was the start of Short Stories, which is now, starting to be something that's special, and not only to, connect people to the business and the brand, but I feel it's something now that we'll be able to look back on in 5 years and 10 years and have, the whole journey documented. So it's pretty cool. But that trip was a very, very fun trip.
That was a wonderful introduction to you guys.
Yeah.
We had a good time. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
It was one of Dad's one. Be here for a good time, not a long time.
Most memorable recent customer interaction you've had?
I got a message yesterday from a customer, just out of the blue, just a message to let me know how incredible the service and all of the team at Short Marine have been to him. So, I get a number of messages like that now, and that's, they're nice. Aside from the messages and the photos and things that we receive from customers when they have had, an amazing day out with their friends or with their family, and they're sharing how good the boat is, for them, and what a great decision it was, and etc. The next best thing to that is when I get messages like that from customers just saying how amazing all the team were.
It's worth it, putting on all that effort and building a team and a culture around it. That's awesome. Favorite place in the world you've been to and why?
So I just got back from the Maldives, as you know. We went there for our honeymoon, and just went back again recently. I'm just very much a kind of sun, ocean kind of type of relaxed, kind of tropical type of guy. And that place is just like heaven on earth.
Ticks all the boxes.
Yeah.
How many takes do you think it takes to nail a short story?
I'd say we're getting a lot better, but there has been the odd one take. 4.
Conservative estimate. I like it. What's a book that's changed your perspective?
Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
What's a hidden gem for Sydney boaters?
Everyone knows Castle Rock. You can't really kind of go past that on the right day. Yeah, I'll run with that.
Yeah, I think if you're not from around here, that's a gem. If you weren't in the marine industry, what would you be doing?
Well, I was trying to play footy, as you know. That didn't work out.
You wouldn't be in Parramatta, I know that.
Thanks, Dan, but yeah.
What's the most challenging aspect of running a marine business?
We have an amazing team, but definitely the management of, a large group of people like that takes a lot. And it's not like what a lot of people say where they're like, oh, it's so hard dealing with people. It's not hard dealing with people. In my view, we're dealing with good people, but to kind of structure the business in the right way and make sure that everyone's kind of motivated and engaged and whatnot takes a lot of time.
A lot of mental bandwidth for sure. What's a skill you wish you had?
I wish I could sing really well.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. That'll be on the cards for next year.
I mean, you've seen me in karaoke, haven't you?
You do put in a good effort. I'll give you
I
that.
try hard.
It's more of a stage presence than a
Yeah, that's what I mean. If I could combine that with a good voice, I'd be a rock
unstoppable.
star.
That's what you'd be doing instead of the marine industry. What's your favorite thing to do outside of work?
Spend time with my son. I've got a 3-year-old boy, Bailey, and he is an absolute character. But I love that. He keeps me really grounded, and that's when I'm away from work.
He's awesome. Best boat name you've heard?
Oh, I've heard some quite crude ones, actually.
That can go on the best.
No, trust me, not these ones. The Office.
It is a good one. What's one essential item for a great day out on the water?
Cold beers are a pretty good thing to have on board if you have a designated driver, of course.
Yeah, a cold beer enhances any day out on the water. Yeah, we've definitely shared a few out there. It makes it all worthwhile. What's the vision for the next 10 years of Short Marine?
Vision for the next 10 years of Short Marine, I do feel that we've done a lot of the foundational groundwork in building the business that we have, as in we now have what we deem the best brands in the world in each of their respective categories. So whether you want a day boat, we've got that option. Whether you want a fishing boat or a fishing family boat, it feels like we've got the best brands in the world. And then from a service perspective, we've built out all of those departments in-house now, the mechanical, electrical, detailing, shipwright and antifouling all in-house. We also believe to be the 2 best locations in Australia as well, be it at Runaway Bay on the Gold Coast and at the Spit in Sydney. So kind of viewing the last 8 years as the first phase of the business, which is establishing all of our foundations, and the focus over the next 5 to 10 years is to really just go deep and double down on what we have and really start to build the brand and our individual brands.
You've also maintained the core values and what you're known for without a big drop in customer satisfaction, right? What was the key to making that happen as you're growing the team?
It was getting really clear on our vision and our mission and why we exist. And now it's just important that we continue to communicate that and ingrain that into the culture and what we do. Whilst we've come a long way and we are in a good place right now, our mission, this is our 10-year goal, is to deliver the best boating experience in the world. It's an ambitious goal. I remember when we first threw it out there to the team, I think we only had 10, 11 people in the team. And I remember they looking at us like we were crazy. And whilst it's still, it can be seen as crazy, it's something that I'm, incredibly determined and, passionate about. And we're not going to stop, iterating and improving our business until we get there. And so, like I said, foundationally, we've got all of the things in place, but for now, it's just to continue to elevate and improve the customer experience.
Why do you think that's important for a business owner, especially in this industry, right? So your big, hairy, audacious goal is being the best in the world, whereas we're in Australia a pretty small player on the scale of things, the amount of people per capita too that are interested in boating. Fishing is the most popular, I believe, recreational sport in Australia, but boating, because of its expense and what it takes to maybe own a boat here. I understand why people look at you a little bit crazy when you said that, but how does that play such an important part in, driving you guys and the success that you've had?
It's huge. I mean, there's the old saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. And another really important piece is that when they talk about happiness, they say that growth is the number one driver to someone's, happiness. And so you can think about it from, a bigger macro level of, okay, well, what's this actual business that we're trying to build, and having that, that big goal definitely keeps us motivated and inspired to constantly look at ways how we can improve. But it's also, if we go down to more of the micro level and we're talking about how we're interacting with the team and things like that, we're thinking, how can we do, everything better? Is it, how can we, when we email the customer, 5 days before it gets on the ship, can we attach photos and videos to that to just improve that experience? I think constantly having that big goal but brought down to the day-to-day gives people that purpose and that drive to feel like that they're growing and they're contributing to us achieving that goal, which just creates that purpose around the work that they do.
Living in line with the mission and vision. How do you want to leave us today, Sam? How do you want to close this off?
We touched on it a little bit throughout, but I think it's important that people hear a lot more, but the fact that life is short, and I think it's important to live every day with that in mind and let that drive the decisions of what you do. And whether that's the next holiday that someone asks you to go on, or whether that's you're thinking about buying a boat, but you're not sure of it, whatever it is, make those decisions with the fact that you're going to die one day. And so make your time while you're here as enjoyable as possible.
I love it. Say yes. Just say yes. Nothing bad happens from saying yes, does it? Sam, thank you, buddy. You're a legend. Very thankful to have met you and appreciate you sharing all your wisdom and perspective. If you're looking for a top quality boat from some amazing people, Grady Viking, Valhalla, Regal, Capelli, or Chris Craft, with the premium experience to match, Sam and the team at Short Marine is the only place you want to go. Check them out on socials. You can see all of our work together and the rest of it. And thank you so much, mate. I appreciate you being here. Let me know what you loved about today's conversation. I'd love to tell more stories of legends like Sam, of people in the marine industry. We can all learn from the greats. So share this episode with someone you think would love it, and subscribe where you heard it, and send some of those legends my way too, so we can hear their story. Catch you on the next one.